another book review. It is going to be on the book called Unexpected Journeys by Paul Perkins. And this is the cover of the book. Thought that was kind of cute little, I don't know, motorcycle, moped, something like that. I think that's what that is, right? So, this book is all about Paul and the revelations he had on, I think it was a 3 or 4 month journey. Paul talks about his travels during this time period. He gives us a little bit about the sights, adventures, and encounters that he has in these different places. Paul is discovering things about himself and confronting his past that he has long since tucked away. During this time, Paul makes some connections to how and who he is currently to what happened to him in the past. Paul is, in a sense, evaluating, coming to grips with some things, and celebrating his life. Paul talks about being abused by an adult he admired when he was a youth. The story doesn't get too specific, but you get the gist of what happened. How events in his youth shaped his thoughts and outlook on sex and sexuality. Paul spoke about the church and the impact it had on his life. Paul's father was a pastor of a church, and so, he's the preacher's kid. And in an Oregon town that didn't hold that pastoral title as an esteemed position in the community, or I should say, at least some people in the community didn't think it was an esteemed position. And Paul kind of received some not so great treatment because of that. He spoke about how his father, being a pastor, and his religious beliefs impacted his friendships and how he governed himself as a youth and as an adult. His belief in God and Christianity was sound. I mean, he knew the Bible, he knew the teachings, he knew the back historical information, and probably could debate any aspect of the Bible that you threw at him. And it kind of cost him. Paul had to learn there is a balance, and one shouldn't be so convicted in their faith that they aren't tolerant or compassionate to those of another faith, or to those that don't have as much knowledge as he did. He had to kind of learn that you can still be sound in your faith, unmovable, unshakable, but still have a level of compassion and respectfulness of others when having those conversations about faith. This brought on a thought that okay, so during this book I had all kind of thoughts. Okay, so this particular part brought a thought that being perfect is somehow connected with being a good Christian. Like I said, Paul kind of had some interactions, lost some friends, and in my opinion, had a little bit of judgmental behavior towards others, and that cost him. But on the other hand, and that's okay. You lose friends for all kinds of reasons. You just grow apart. You have different beliefs. You have different ways of living life. that wasn't really what clicked in my mind. What clicked in my mind was the thought that he kind of had this perfection image, um, and that there was no room for error or life experiences that could even remotely be considered ungodly. Okay. And again, nothing wrong with that. He just had to navigate through that. And I think from reading, kind of came to a, hey, I can live life and still be a good Christian. I can I can still have my faith. I can still live in a way that I believe is pleasing and good to God, and still live. But that was just my takeaway. That was just my thought on that particular part. Um, I mean, he was kind of so caught up in faith and straight and narrow and don't deviate and, you know, so narrow, um, that he didn't actually live a lot of the time. He was so caught up in that. Um, it also brought forth the thought that God never asked us to be perfect. I mean, that's a burden we placed on ourselves. He never asked us to be perfect. We will never be perfect. Period. I mean, I hate when people say period, but I just did. But we will never be perfect. And so that connection that you have to be perfect in order to be a good Christian, or to um, represent a godliness about you, that you somehow have to be perfect in everything you do, say, act, behave. Now, we should all try to be our best, but we're not perfect. Um, Paul Paul evaluated his relationship with his family and how he was a bit judgmental, and that was my wording. Judgmental is my wording. Um, there was an incident that occurred, and the way Paul's father handled it made the situation worse. Um, he talks about how the inappropriateness that occurred in his youth had a lasting effect on him. And Paul disclosed that his parents often didn't handle situations in the best manner, even though they thought it was acts of protection or shielding um, the children from certain things. Um, he mentioned something about watching a movie or a TV show, and it would get to like a kissing part or something like that, and his mom would cover their eyes or stand in front of the TV to block their view, and how that kind of played into his thought process towards intimacy, sexuality. Paul said a fear of disappointing them, his parents, fear of causing their pain, was the root of his reflex towards secrecy. Wow. And so a thought came to mind: how many children keep things secret because of fear in disappointing their parents, when they probably should be telling their parents those things? But that fear of disappointing them, or the fear of how they're going to react, keeps things secret. Paul tried his hand at a long distance relationship. He kind of describes how that goes throughout this book. You'll have to read the book to see how that plays out. Okay. I was not happy with Alyssa's behavior. I just wasn't. I thought she could have handled things in a better way. Um, However, everyone is entitled to make the best decision for his or her own life. The relationship between Paul and Alyssa made me think that you shouldn't look towards another to make you happy, feel whole, or feel a loneliness void. I mean, no one can make you whole but you. I know we often use that oh, they just complete me, or oh, that's my better half. I mean, we kind of all from time to time have probably said those lines or something similar, but the reality and the thing about it is you make you happy. That's a you thing. An outside person can only add to your happiness or subtract from your happiness. But you are the only one that can truly control your level of happiness. Just my opinion. Just my opinion. Just my opinion, okay, people? And I had the thought that how thinking other people can cure your loneliness when you could be in a crowd of people or in a relationship and still feel lonely. Again, that's an internal gauge. That's an internal thing that only you have control over. So it can't always be filled or fixed with external things and people. In my opinion, that's inside healing that needs to take place, or inside evaluation that needs to take place. And those thoughts are coming from when I was reading this book. So this book is going to make you think. It's going to make you think about some things, okay? So I'm just sharing with you some of the thoughts I had that were generated by reading this book. And I mean, it's not new thoughts for me, but I mean, it just, while reading this, it was like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna make a note of that, because that made me think of that while reading this. So again, happiness is not someone else's job. That is your job for you. You determine, you wake up every day. You can determine if you're happy, sad, mad, whatever. And someone else can only add to or take away from, if you allow it. So I think it's an inside job. It is not totally the outside person's responsibility to make you happy. Because some people, no matter what you do, they ain't going to be happy. So they're just not going to be happy no matter what you do. So that's an internal gauge and an internal work that has to be done. And you will have to read the book to see what all Paul encounters on his journey. Paul had some thought-provoking revelations and assessments. Some of the things I jotted down from reading this book is that Paul said a vibrant faith requires intellect and emotion. Paul also wrote, loneliness could be a symptom of the fear of rejection or result of previous rejection. He said that shame produces secrecy, and secrecy compounds shame. It's a self-feeding cycle growing larger and larger until it consumes like a raging fire. Paul questioned how could he take care of a wife and kids if he didn't feel stable, secure, and confident. Again, my thought is there is some internal work that needs to be done. And I will say this, you're forever doing internal work on yourself. That's all life is working on yourself to hopefully be okay one day. You're forever working on yourself. You're either working on your mind, getting more knowledge, increasing your intellect. You're working on your physical appearance, getting healthy, getting thin, gaining weight. I mean, depends on what spectrum you're at. You're always working on something. You're working on your friendships and your relationships. You're working on being a better employee or being a better contributor. I mean, there is something that you are always working on as a human being. There is always something to work on as a human being. So it's a never-ending process of working on yourself in some way, shape, or form. Just saying my thought. So, during Paul's journey, he encountered all types of people. Okay? Paul gained clarity from an unsuspecting person. And you'll have to read the book to find out all about that. However, it brought something else to mind. It did. It brought something else to mind. And I've said it before, so I'll say it on here. That God uses all kinds of people to get a message to you. If he's knocking on your door and you're just not answering, you're not picking up that phone, you're not connecting, he will often use someone or something to get a message to you. And we often judge the messenger, thinking they are unworthy of ministering or imparting wisdom or a godly message to us. We often be like, who is that? Like, you trying to tell me? Like, oh, not. Like, you, who are you? Like, I don't think God is going to be sending no message to me through you. Like, I don't think so. So we often judge the messenger. Okay? And so when we're too busy judging the messenger's worthiness of providing a message or words of wisdom, I've often said before, don't worry about the worthiness of the messenger. Did you catch the message? Because if you think about it, God has used the lowest of the low to give a word, to give a message, to do his work. And he's used the lowest of the low. So instead of spending time judging the person that's giving the message, just catch the message. And then you have to marinate on that thing and go from there. So, all in all, this was really just a book about Paul and his journey of what I would say is self-discovery, restoration, and growth. I mean, I think this journey that he took made him evaluate things that had occurred in his childhood that was contributing to behaviors and thoughts and perspectives he was having as an adult. And I think he had to go through that process, almost like a purging, if you will, kind of almost like a purging, and kind of make those connections and then determine, okay, now I've made this connection, what am I going to do about it? I think this was a great book that can provoke thought, As you can see, I was giving you my little tidbits. I mean, just based off of reading the book. The author did provide a note so the reader can better understand the road this book will travel and why it was written. I definitely enjoyed the journey. It did make you think about some things. Of course, I didn't tell you everything that's in the book. You'll have to read the book to find out details and specifics about Paul and his journey. So it's almost kind of like a memoir-ish type book. And I think you could learn some things from it. I think you could definitely have some food for thought, marinate on some things, do some own self-evaluation, if you will. This is a good weekend read, though. I do feel like after all the lead up, the ending was kind of rushed. I I think I would have liked a couple of more chapters at the end so it could give some extra description. I mean, it just kind of felt a little rushed. I mean, after all that we went through, I think it could have gave us a couple of more chapters with some detail. But you'll have to read the book to find out how it ends. I'm not going to tell you how it ends. I knew nothing about Paul or his political career life. I didn't know anything about this. And honestly, I didn't read the back of the book. Oftentimes when I pick a book, I often don't read to find out what it's about. I typically go in blind, okay? And so I did not know what to expect other than that it was just going to be a journey. I did in my mind think it was going to be juicier or, I don't know, something happened, but I was pleasantly pleased with the book and the direction it took and the insight that was in it. It does have some faith-based feelings in there, but it was a good palate cleanser for me because I've been reading all kind of stuff. Okay, so it was a good palate cleanser. I was surprised that it did keep me turning the pages to see how everything unfolded. Like, I was like, what is Paul doing? Like, seriously, like, dude. He definitely sprinkled in some biblical points throughout the book. It did keep me interested to find out, okay, this dude right here, like, I don't know if he should be going on this journey by himself. I don't know. But you'll have to read the book to find out how Paul came out of this journey. Okay. The only triggers I could come up with were the minor references to childhood sexual abuse. It did not go into like graphic detail. I mean, it just wasn't graphic about it. It was almost as I'm giving you just enough to know something happened. There is a hint of addiction. Obviously, there's some religious commentary. All in all, this is a nice peek into Paul's life. There are no discussion questions provided. There are some things that obviously you could talk about from reading this book. You could talk about religion and how it affects one's lifestyle and outlook on others and personal behaviors. The topic of adults using their influence on youth to facilitate inappropriate and sexual abuse. How parents react to sexual abuse allegations can impact the child's outlook on sexuality and sex for years to come. The topic of self-exploration to promote growth and positive change. The topic of traveling alone, do's and don'ts. The topics of exploring family dynamics and how what happens in childhood has a huge impact on how one maneuvers in adulthood. These are just a few. I kind of added some commentary throughout this review, so you're hearing pieces of the book and then pieces of my thoughts when reading this book. So there's a smashing happening in this review, and so you're gonna have to read the book to suss out some of this. I did give this book a 9 out of 10. I would have liked a little bit more description in some areas. I definitely kind of felt like the last, couple chapters were rushed. I think they should have kind of just gave us a few more chapters to just kind of go with a little bit more detail. But all in all, it is a good, quick weekend read. So pick it up. Tell me what you think. Tell me if you like it. Tell me what thoughts you had while reading this book. So I would be so grateful if you would subscribe, click like, share, tell a friend. Thank you for all of those that have watched the book reviews, all of those that have commented, all of those that have shared. I so greatly appreciate it. And so until next time, keep turning the pages, my book lovers.